Joining us today. My name is Erin Blaskovic with Cleveland Construction, and I am the vice chair, or one of the vice chairs of the NAIOP Women's Leadership Network. The mission of our network is to bring together a diverse mix of women in commercial real estate who, through the discussion of industry related topics, educate and empower each other as they strive to succeed in their careers. I want to thank our sponsors for their ongoing support, especially during this challenging year. The discussion today is just the start of a much needed focus on race, diversity, and inclusion in the commercial real estate industry. We really hope you were able to learn and grow from this program as well as future ones. Please submit all questions in the Q&A box throughout the discussion, and we will leave time at the end for answers. With that, I will introduce our moderator for today, Chris Nance, Vice President, Construction and Inclusive Talent Initiatives at Greater Cleveland Partnership.
Good morning and welcome. Erin, thank you for that. And I'm excited to be here this morning. And if you hadn't noticed, I am a thorn among roses. I'm grateful to have been invited to play a small role in this really important and timely discussion. The job this morning for me as the moderator is to say as little as possible and keep the conversation moving along. My job has also been made very simple by Erin and Amber and Shannon and by the folks at NAIOP that have organized this effort. As the title of the session suggests, Race, Diversity, and Inclusion Initiatives in the Commercial Real Estate Industry, how to take small steps to make big changes. You know, we are certainly in a moment of time where there perhaps are a lot of moving pieces and a lot of interest to take action as it relates to issues of race and culture within many industry sectors, perhaps, and certainly our conversation today in terms of taking that action within the commercial real estate sector will be really important. Just a little bit about the next slide, please, Sandy. Thank you. Just a little bit about the work that I do. As Erin mentioned, I'm the Vice President of Construction and Inclusive Talent Initiatives. This is just a single slide. And by the way, folks, for those of us who've been living in Zoom land, our focus on slides will be on the front end of this discussion. But once we finish up our introductions, we will be engaged in conversation for the balance of this morning's session. So the Construction Diversity Initiative, we're now going into our 7th year. And as this slide indicates, who do we serve? The construction diversity effort initially focused on connecting women and people of color into the construction sector in entry-level jobs. But over time, and in alignment with this morning's discussion, we shifted that focus to include where can we connect and how can we connect women and people of color across the entire construction sector, including, as the slide indicates, professional services, certainly construction management, the trades, both our suppliers and vendors, facilities management, as well as senior management positions. Next slide, please. I do the work of construction diversity within the context of the Equity and Inclusion Division, formerly known as the Commission on Economic Inclusion, located here at the Greater Cleveland Partnership. As I think most folks know, the GCP is Northeast Ohio's Chamber of Commerce. We're the largest chamber in the state of Ohio, and we are one of the largest, if not the largest, metropolitan chamber in the United States. And equity and inclusion is very much a part of the organization and operation of the GCP. And we've been very fortunate this year to establish and really to highlight programs that we had been moving forward over the last couple of years. And I just wanted to, these slides will be available to you both after the session. Our business growth compass is a way for individuals to connect to minority businesses throughout our region. We certainly encourage you to check out our inclusion marketplace where we match suppliers and buyers in an online setting. Our DEI assessment has been around for 20 years. It allows organizations of every size to establish a baseline for where you are relative to your D&I practices. Again, the theme, consistent with today's theme, what are some of the small steps, specific steps? Oftentimes that begins with understanding where your individual organization is and then being able to move forward from there. And then finally, the best practice library. For those of you who've discovered this, you're going to say, oh my goodness, Chris, I'm glad you mentioned this. The best practice library is an amazing resource that is, again, embedded within the equity and inclusion division, where you can click on it. All of these services are available for both members and non-members alike. But the best practice library gives you access to the most current articles and information relative to diversity and inclusion strategies across multiple sectors. So with that, I will pause, and I want to quickly now introduce this really dynamic panel that we have this morning. First, Sandra Madison, who is a CEO and chairperson of the historic Robert P. Madison International firm. Look forward to hearing from Sandra. Joyce Huang, Vice President of Community Development, Midtown Incorporated, also one of the key leaders of one of our dynamic CDCs. And then we have two representatives from NRP group, Tanya Suber, Manager, Learning and Development of NRP Group, Tiffany Montgomery, Asset Manager at the NRP Group, which have built some really important development projects here in Cleveland, here in Ohio, and in fact, one of the largest real estate developers in the US. So we have the star-studded panel. Let me now quickly transition to that panel by asking you to not only say a little bit more about who you are and your role within your respective organizations, and also help us again, level set today's conversation by letting us know where you are relative to this race inclusion work within the commercial real estate industry. So with that, Sandra, would you like to get us kicked off?
Sure. As Chris said, I'm Sandra Madison with Robert P. Madison International. I've been with Robert P. Madison for 30 years, of which 4.5 I am now the CEO. So I've done a lot of work here in Cleveland. And you can go to our website and see all the work that we've done. So I'm very much vested in this topic because I've seen it for many years. I guess I've been in this business totally for about 40 years. So I've seen a lot of growth, but it's been very slow. So I'm very happy to be a part of this panel and talk and just talk about this topic. Chris, do you want to ask me a question? So let's just talk about what I've seen, and I guess since I've been a part of this the architectural world. When I came out of school, my sight was trying to get a job, number one, and that was not easy. I graduated in 1980, and so when I came out, I was very bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and ready to go, and I thought it's going to be great. And I found that it was very difficult to find a job. And I knew that my work was good. I was actually asked to speak at my graduation. I was too shy to do that. I don't know why, but I didn't do it. So I know I had a good background. I had good grades. I had learned a lot, and I was ready. But it was very hard to find a job. And I soon found out that it wasn't because of anything other than people like me they didn't know me. I mean, there weren't too many people like me. And I later found out just recently that I was only the 27th female Black architect in the country. 27. That was not that long ago. I'm like, I'm not that old. What's going on? And then I was the first in Maryland, the first in 1980. So I'm like, wow, that does not seem, no, actually, I registered in 1989. So in 89, that was not that long ago. So I'm just wondering, what is going on? So I immediately started working in the schools. I would go into the schools and started introducing architecture to young people, because just like I didn't know what an architect did, it was my counselor who actually introduced me to architecture. And because she asked me, what did I like to do? And I said, well, I liked art. I love math. I love to write. She says, why don't you try architecture? And I'm like, what do they do? You know, what do architects do? So I was able to get introduced into a Black firm in Boston, and I fell in love with the field. But it's all about introduction, all about mentoring, all about getting students to understand that there is an opportunity out there, you know, to get into this field of construction. And I always love to build things. So, but I went into the design side. Now I don't want to take too much time. I only had a few more minutes, so I'm going to stop there and go talk more.
Tanya, you want to pick up from there?
Sure.
Actually,
Oh, is it you,
oh.
Tiffany? Go ahead.
Yep, Tiffany and Tanya. Okay, sorry. Excellent.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you today. Thank you to NAOP and the Women's Leadership Network for planning and hosting this event. My name is Tiffany Montgomery, and I'm an asset manager at the NRP Group. My educational background is in counseling and human development, and prior to entering the world of real estate, I spent 10 years working in higher education. For the past 5 years, I have served the development, property management, and asset management sides of our business, and currently oversee a number of assets within our portfolio. Additionally, I've had the privilege of working with a group of dedicated professionals on the development and implementation of NRP's D&I initiatives, as well as provide leadership to our Women's Inclusion Network. So I'm very excited to be here with all of you today and looking forward to this discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Tanya Suber, and I'm incredibly excited, echoing off of the comments that Tiffany shared, to have this opportunity to be talking with all of you today about this important topic. I'm the manager of learning and development for the corporate teams at the NRP Group. I've been with the organization for nearly 1.5 years now. And my background is in communications. That's what my degree is in. And so shortly after graduating, I began my career in training and development. And so really my passion is helping people to find opportunities and unlock their potential. And I am incredibly grateful to be able to be at an organization that allows me to do just that. I co-lead the Diversity and Inclusion Committee with Tiffany. And so we've had the opportunity to work across the organization with passionate employees that are looking to further our diversity efforts. And so it's been an incredible journey. I think what we're going to do is talk a little bit about NRP. I think we have a slide.
Yep. Sandy, I think we'll tee up the slide for NRP, if I'm not mistaken. And Tanya, why don't you continue as those slides come online?
Yeah, so NRP, we've been around for 26 years, and we're a fully integrated developer, general contractor, and property manager. And our mission is very simple. And that's been our mission since the organization began. And it's one that I'm incredibly proud of, and all employees are incredibly proud of. And it's to create exceptional rental opportunities for individuals and families, regardless of income. And so, you know, we are committed to doing that. And when we look at our efforts as it relates to diversity and inclusion, Sandy, if you can click to the next slide for me. If I had to sum it up, it's really around our core values of respecting individuals. And so we believe that everyone has unique qualities, perspectives, strengths that they bring to NRP. And we want to ensure that we're activating people's best selves. So that way we're able to come together and really deliver on that powerful mission to advance and create those exceptional rental opportunities. But then also we're showing up for our communities and helping our communities to realize their best selves as well. So as we think about diversity and inclusion in terms of some of the things that we've done education for our entire organization. So we're currently offering that in partnership with Third Space Action Lab, and we are sponsoring trainings through the Racial Equity Institute. And so we're doing phase 1 workshops. We are also looking at talent acquisition. How can we expand the sources that we're trying to find diverse talent? And so we're partnering with historically Black colleges and universities, and we're looking at different organizations that we can partner with. And then talent development. How do we ensure that everyone has opportunities and we're being thoughtful and strategic about the things that we offer within our organization, so that way we're moving talented individuals and giving them opportunities at NRP. Another thing that we're really proud of is our equity talks. And so it's really important with everything that's happening in 2020 and even prior to that, we wanted to make sure that we were giving people a space to be able to engage in discussions and broaden their awareness as it relates to the different equity issues that are present across the spectrum. And so this is an opportunity to bring in community leaders from outside of the organization to come in and talk with our group and allow us to ask questions, build that muscle where we're engaging in conversations in a more powerful way. So that way we can really influence change that's meaningful to us as individuals, meaningful to us as teams, meaningful to us as an organization, because we understand that we're in diverse communities. And so we've got to understand it in order to be able to provide that value to the communities that we serve. I'm going to bump it over to Tiffany. I think there's a couple more items, and then we can, get started with the conversation, which we're incredibly excited about.
Thank you, Tanya.
Thank you.
So as Tanya mentioned, NRP's commitment to diversity and inclusion really permeates all areas of our business, and we recognize that the diverse backgrounds of our employee base really allows us to fulfill our mission and in turn strengthen our company. So in conjunction with some of those broad education, talent acquisition, and talent development focuses that Tanya mentioned, NRP also possesses a robust employee-driven diversity and inclusion committee. And that committee is comprised of a diverse subset of our organization in background, department, and role. And it works to foster an environment where our employees really feel empowered to bring their unique perspectives to the workplace. And the D&I committee and the corresponding subcommittees really assist in the evaluation of the existing policy that is in place. They drive goals and they affect change within the organization. So Tanya mentioned a little bit about the education components, but I just want to draw your attention to a couple of additional groups that work under this D&I umbrella. One is our NRP Cares group, and they focus on advocating on behalf of our local residential communities and neighborhoods. And they do this through direct volunteer work, as well as by supporting our local nonprofit partners. And then additionally, we have two affinity groups. One is Pride at NRP, and their mission is to enrich the professional livelihood of the LGBTQ and allied employees that we have at NRP through education, outreach, and advocacy. And lastly, our WIN group is really the Women's Inclusion Network, there to promote the hiring and developing of women at NRP through education, awareness, and programming. And it is the comprehensive and varied approach that we employ that allows us to produce the best work for the diverse residents, partners, and stakeholders that we serve. And we recognize that our D&I journey has really just begun at NRP, and our focus is to continue to evolve our culture and really strive to be a place where all people can thrive.
Terrific, Tiffany and Tanya, thank you so much. And Joyce, you are now up to bat. And let me just quickly say, for those of us who are familiar with the commercial real estate business here in Northeast Ohio, we know that we are extremely fortunate, even blessed, to have this incredibly rich network of community development corporations. And CDCs are very much at the core of developing our neighborhoods, kind of one person at a time, for lack of a better phrase. And certainly Midtown is among the leaders in doing that. And Joyce, please share some of what terrific work that Midtown is doing. Thank you, Joyce.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you for this opportunity for the NAIOP. organization for me to speak a little bit about the work that we're doing at Midtown. And as Chris mentioned, we are a CDC, we are a nonprofit, and we facilitate real estate along the corridors of Euclid, Chester, Carnegie, Payne Avenue, between East 30th Street and East 79th Street. And since the Health Line came into Euclid, we've seen over $300 million of development along Euclid Avenue, and more to come. You may be familiar with the Cleveland Foundation project and the innovation projects that have been slated for East 66th Street and other residential projects. But for us as a CDC, we're really focused on the pre-development side. So for me, I'm an urban planner, and I'm trained in thinking about neighborhood planning. What's the future, and what's the future of land use? And for us, I'll talk a little bit about the actions that we've taken in the past years, and then I'll talk a little bit about how we got there as part of the intro. So what we've done at Midtown, we've been really impacted by the Racial Equity Institute Year of Awareness work through Third Space over the past 3 to 4 years, starting in late 2016. And one of the things that really just stood out to us is that looking at equity specifically at real estate for us needs to come through a racial lens, because in terms of race, because of how that's greatly impacted the divide between Black outcomes, Black communities, and as well as how we've seen real estate advantage white communities. And so we have applied this analysis to our organization. 2 of the, I would say, like work products that we've come up with in terms of policies is that in January earlier this year, we adopted through the leadership of our executive director, a racial equity statement that we collectively wrote as a staff that talks about how racial equity is both a process and an outcome. And we can talk more about this later on in the discussion. In the next slide, you'll see that we have been working on an equitable development framework, which is in process. And so this outlines our guiding principles as well as a few asks. And the intent of this is that it's a letter to all real estate developers who would like to develop in Midtown around what our core North Stars are in terms of what we'd like to see happen. And if you jump to the next slides, I think this is what I'd really like to land on in the introduction, is that it took us years to get to this place where we're like adopting these policy frameworks in our organization. And what we're really focused on is that because real estate is a system that's impacted by specifically racial inequities, we really wanted to take a look at the whole system and to do an analysis. And these questions are just the tip of the iceberg, but some of the questions that we started asking are, in overall planning, what's the best approach for gathering continued feedback on uses and places that serve resident needs? For concepts, who originates the development concept and does it fit with an overall equity plan and framework for the neighborhood? And on and on. And we know that there are many systems involved in real estate, including financing, including planning and zoning, public policy. If you go to the next page, next slide. There's design, construction, and engineering, which this group is a part of. And the goal of these questions is to really take a pause and say, what are the processes, practices, and policies that we sort of all assume as default, and where are the areas that we need to disrupt and maybe ask some questions so that we can get a whole picture of the system and how we might be able to inject equity. And so for us, we have been going through this process over the past 4 years, and happy to speak more on this as we continue on the discussion.
Terrific, Joyce, thank you. And thank you to each of the panelists for getting us kicked off. So Tanya, we're going to shift to a question about, you talked about in your, as you and Tiffany were describing the work of NRP, how that work is informed, right? It's informed in some ways by data, and it's also informed by obviously the relationships that you build among and between employees. So can you just describe a little bit more specifically about how you, and again, for each of our panelists, feel free to jump in as we move through this discussion. The yield on diversity, how has the industry changed in its attitude toward women and minorities during your work with NRP relative to commercial real estate?
Yeah, I think the thing is that there's certainly a recognition that uh, diversity, there's a business return for that. We've seen
Hmm.
articles in McKinsey, people can throw study after study at you as it relates to, diversity and why it's necessary and why it's good for the business, right? But I think what we've been hearing in the current narrative has really elevated, what's truly needs to happen or change in order for that diversity to be realized. And so, you see with the racial equity work, there's a lot of conversation as it relates to the
Hmm.
narratives that may have been in place that may have been holding that system up. And so, as
Hmm.
people have been becoming more aware through education, people are starting to ask questions, really tough ones, right? That challenge the thinking. And as Joyce had talked about, the programs, the policies that really have created the outcomes that we're seeing. So if we're seeing that the numbers are
Hmm.
low, ask the
Hmm.
question, well, why are those numbers are low? So are we, looking in the same places? Are we trying things differently? And there used to be this narrative in terms of, externally, well, we can't find, talent. But are we thinking about where that talent is located and how do we ask the questions a lot differently? So
Hmm.
I think the thing
Hmm.
is that when you look at the information that's out there, I think that the narrative has really been shaken up. You see the equal pay movement with women, and people are starting to ask those really tough questions. And so, because of that, I think that we're really getting at the foundation, fundamental aspects that need to happen in order for diversity really to begin to thrive within the commercial real estate industry. And so I think that there's more intention. I think that people are, challenging themselves to understand how they make movement in terms of what's meaningful to that organization. Um,
Hmm.
and it's just been really exciting to see because I think that we've kind of talked around it, but we never
Hmm.
put the true issues squarely in the center. And I think in 2020, we're seeing it squarely in the center. We're talking about race, in a powerful way that, wasn't happening prior to. And because of that, I think it allows us to begin to really challenge those systems in order to create the change that we all hope to see.
And Tanya, thank you. And Joyce, I don't know if you want to jump in here. Just it occurred to me that, and you mentioned in your overview how intentional Midtown has been relative to those conversations.
Sure. And I think for us, we've tried to look at, again, the whole system, knowing some facts, like for Black communities, many households are headed towards net income of $0 in like 2040 because of some of the wealth gaps that exist in America. And it would take 400 years for a Black family to make the amount of wealth that a white family has because of the gaps in sort of homeownership, real estate as a primary way to create wealth for an individual family. And I think for us, we've really tried to take a look at, well, looking at the system, how do we consider land, first of all, and who benefits from the land and who benefits from real estate. And also in regards to the numbers of actual Black and brown developers out there. If you look at the economic yields of the real estate industry, it's massive. It's massive, and only a few people really benefit from that investment. The developers out there. And so I think one of our goals, which I think we'll talk to you more, is how can we support and advocate for the pipeline of Black and brown developers, which is a challenge in itself, just because the whole system is at play, right? Access to capital and sort of the historic wealth gaps that prevent people from entering real estate development when other families have generations of wealth and access to capital to build on. So.
And Joyce, thank you for starting to build that bridge toward our next question about historical challenges. And Sandra, coming to you, you mentioned the net worth of people of color, and some might remember, and it is an article in our best practice library, that the Boston Globe published an article a couple of years ago that the net worth of African Americans in the city of Boston was $8. $8, right? And so I'm turning the corner quickly to historical challenges, Sandra. And, there's a phrase I was introduced to in my strategy class in business school. The phrase is culture eats strategy for lunch. So talk a little bit about the culture of your discipline as one of the truly pioneering women in architecture in this country. And obviously with your father having established Robert P. Madison, and now you as a second generation CEO. Share with us some of your perspective on some of those historical challenges and how you see this particular moment as an opportunity for us to shift and to move forward and to make progress in a positive way.
Thanks, Chris, for the question. And I am actually a niece-in-law for Robert. I just want to clear that up because he does have 2 daughters and I'm not one of them, but I'm his niece. But thanks for the question, because it is one that I guess I've been working on for a very long time, and now I feel like it's finally taking some traction. So one of the things that our organizations are doing, I've joined like 3 different organizations that are very much involved with trying to increase that narrative of I can't find a minority architect, or I cannot, which I just got that, someone just said that to me just recently, that they said they couldn't find a Black architect. And so they says, well, I know one. I mean, if I guess people don't know if they don't know. And I guess if they keep going back to the same of what they do know and not looking beyond that, they don't see, or maybe, I don't know if they don't want to see, or if they do want to see, I don't want to go into that narrative yet, but they don't know that there are minority architects out there. So we're trying to not only increase the number of Black architects, like I said, there's was it 3% that are Black out of all architects in the country, only 3%, and 0.3% are women, Black women. So we're trying to increase that. And that went up this year. We got to 500 Black female architects this year. That was a goal that we set, that NOMA set. NOMA is National Organization of Minority Architects. We got there this year, and we're going beyond that, thank goodness. Because we first of all, we set out and we went out and started to mentor young aspiring architects. We went into the colleges, let them know that we were there for them, to help them with the exam process, because it's a very long process. When I took it, it was 9 parts in 4 days, one of which was a 12-hour exam. So it's changed. So now it's 6 parts, but it's still very intensive. So it can be very intimidating, but we sat down with students and mentored them and gave them study guides. And we sat down and talked to them about what were your questions, just to help them get through this, because it is a very daunting exam. So we've seen strides being made, but it's a slow process. We're also going into schools and working with K through 12. We're starting very early, because we're finding that kids, when we go into the schools in high schools, a lot of times it's too late, or they've already made their mind and going another direction. You have to have a background in architecture in order to get into the school. You have to have a portfolio. You have to start building toward getting that thinking about that career. So we're starting early, and we're so the AIA is going in. We have something called Dream Architecture, and we're going into the schools and giving students little design charrettes. And if you go to our website, you'll see some wonderful things that the kids have done. I couldn't believe what came out. But we have to get to them early, because a lot of students don't know what architects do. How many people hire an architect? Not too many, unless you really got some money to hire an architect to design your house or something. You really don't have it.
And we are going to come, in fact, in that next question, we're going to dig a little deeper on the mentoring for the next generation. But other panelists on the historical challenges, who would like to jump in and share some additional thoughts on historical challenges relative to women and their access to opportunities, perhaps within the commercial real estate sector? Tiffany?
So what I would say is that, similar to some of the comments that Tanya had previously made related to data, I think that, certainly we have the information that we need to be successful. And now what we need to be able to do is move in a direction that creates change. And so bringing folks together to have important dialogue, evaluating where we currently stand and where we need to go. And I think the only way to do that is listen more than we speak. And so I think that that's something that we really try to do at NRP. And I know that others are really getting behind that, and in the recognition that we don't have all the answers. And our goal is to be able to open up that dialogue, because together we're stronger and we're better. And that assists us in advancing women and minorities within the field of real estate and within the work that we do every single day at NRP. So just that knowledge base of, yes, the conversation is the first piece to that, but it's really the action that follows that makes all the difference. And we are getting there, but we still have a long road to go. So I think these types of conversations and the work that all of the folks on this panel and beyond are doing are going to advance us into the future. And it's really an expectation of folks that are entering our organizations as young professionals that we are doing this, that we are representing them, and that they have a clear career trajectory within our organizations for upward mobility. And it is our job to present those opportunities to them and to help to elevate the next generation. And together we can do that.
Tiffany, that is the perfect segue to the next question. And again, I appreciate you underscoring the importance of networks, as we know that this Women's Leadership Network is for NAIOP this is the first of what they certainly plan and hope to be not only a series of discussions, but an ongoing effort as a part of continuing to create these kinds of conversations within the framework and construct of the commercial real estate industry. So Sandy, if you could put up this slide that talks about the mentorship, the SWAG program for us to take a look at. And just as Sandy is putting that slide up, both Sandra and Tiffany mentioned about mentoring the next generation. And some of you, because we have a number of sector partnership initiatives within the greater Cleveland area. And one of them particularly focuses on creating opportunities. A part of one of those programs is creating opportunities for specifically our CMSD, our Cleveland Metropolitan School District seniors. We are now in what we are describing as the 2.0 version of a program where nearly half of CMSD students go directly into the world of work. And so as Sandra and Tiffany were speaking, young people aren't familiar with architecture, with engineering, with commercial real estate specifically. And so there is an opportunity. Here's another commercial. And we'll have this for any of you who are listening to and participating in this webinar today. We are looking for volunteers who are involved in the commercial real estate sector to invest a half an hour or 45 minutes talking about a little bit about who you are and what you do within the framework of your professional service as it relates to commercial real estate and to construction, to show young people in particular that there is a pathway for a very promising career in areas that they may be completely unfamiliar with. So Sandy, thank you. You can take the slide down. So this slide will be available as a part of the post-presentation wrap-up. But Tiffany, just picking up on your efforts within NRP to mentor that next generation of leadership. What kinds of things are you involved in, and how might others become involved in those efforts?
So thanks, Chris. Yes, NRP and the Millennia companies actually joined forces in August of 2019. And in doing so, they have begun the creation of the NRP and Millennia Center for Property Management at Cleveland State University in their College of Business. And this program has already begun offering classes and will include an internship program and applied research initiative that is designed to meet the considerable needs of the real estate and property management firms that are local and national. And we have recently built on that existing partnership between NRP and Cleveland State University by launching a fireside chat series that's entitled Moments That Matter. And this series really focuses on the power of mentoring, and it will continue to feature executives from Northeast Ohio sharing their key insights and takeaways from their storied careers as well as their companies. And the underlying goal of this partnership with Cleveland State is really to expose students to real estate and property management fields, which creates an environment for engaged learning and a steady flow of talent that's entering the industry. So as we've mentioned before, students may not even know that property management is a career path. And so what we're working to do is expose them, similar to what Sandra mentioned in the K-12 environment, really taking that same mindset to higher education. And so this allows us to do that. And then additionally, NRP within our company has placed a significant focus on mentoring within our organization from an organic approach. And I believe that that Tanya could share some more specifics as it relates to how we do that.
That's your cue, Tanya.
Yeah, we got the unmute dance. I'm like looking for like, where do I unmute? So essentially from an organization standpoint, we believe that there's great thinking that's all around us. And so we're encouraging individuals to take advantage of that. And really thinking about mentoring. I mean, you can have it where it's long-term relationships, but it could be powerful moments, right? That happen in just a few minutes. And so the cumulative effect of that can really hearken to transformational change. And so we're encouraging people to do that within our organization, reach out to people outside of our organization, but then also how do you reach back and help others that may have an interest in learning more about NRP, what we do, and how to, get involved. How do we ensure that we're expanding that and we're sharing the great work that real estate entails with all of those that we may come into contact with. So we're encouraging people to not only be mentored, but to mentor other folks. So that's kind of, it's been exciting in terms of how we look at it.
So important, so important. I remember I happen to be the father of two millennial young people.
Yeah.
I almost called them children. They are in their 20s, and there's a reluctance to connect with folks. And I remember being taught years ago to create a mentor-rich environment for myself. And so there may be, to your point, Tanya, there may be someone who you connect with very infrequently, but that person can provide some guidance, in contrast to someone who's really both a mentor and a really kind of a career coach. So there's different kinds. So Sandra, if you could jump in there, because obviously you have both benefited from tremendous mentoring, and you are also deeply involved, as you started to describe, in mentoring efforts, both here in Northeast Ohio and beyond.
Yeah, so I'm working on 3 different boards right now. The ACE board, which is Architecture, Construction, and Engineering. And they are working with CMSD in 11 schools, including, and also in Warrensville. And we send mentors out to these students and talk about architecture, the career of architecture. We have architects in each school, contractors, and engineers that go out and talk to these students for the whole semester or the whole year, the whole year. And they learn about what we do through a project. So it's a competition. They're competing against the other schools, and they design a project that is actually designed by one of the people on the board. They put together program, and they designed this program. So they learn by doing. And then they also get scholarships, and we follow them, mentor them as they enter into college. Now, not all of them go into the ACE careers, but we still follow them and mentor them. And then I'm also part of the AIA, where I'm head of the director of Women in Architecture. And what we do more so even now is talk about how do we bring equity into the architecture for women in particular, because for a long time, like every other profession, we were way underpaid compared to men. And how do we try to level that playground? And also, we were not promoted as fast, or as men. So we're trying to bring that to light, and also talk more about that, and we're making strides there. And then I'm also part of NOMA, which is National Organization of Minority Architects. And we, again, are a group of minority architects and aspiring architects, helping each other navigate the profession and trying to help one another, grow. Either if you have a firm, grow your firm, making networking, and then also going into, like we said, going into the schools, going into the colleges, talking to young people, mentoring them, because a mentor in this profession means a lot, and probably in all professions, but it's always good to know what you don't know, and have someone help you if you have a question, or just to navigate getting your licensing. We've talked about that. So it's all about, like someone said, reaching back and
Right.
and
Right.
helping someone else. Yeah, it's nothing more important than that.
And all of those networks. And again, I know that this is a really important focus for the women's leadership group within NAOP, is that we can identify to those who are participating in this webinar today that there are a network of organizations, right, who have some shared and some overlapping interests. And you mentioned several that you are specifically involved, Sandra, and we certainly want to continue to make sure that we help to connect those dots, so that, Sandra, to your point earlier, you mentioned having a conversation with someone who said, I can't find one. Part of our role, certainly today, and certainly as a part of the work that I do here at the Greater Cleveland Partnership within the Equity and Inclusion Division, is to help to connect those dots on behalf of the construction sector and in partnership with the commercial real estate sector. Erin is reminding me that for those of you who have questions, to be sure to put those in the chat. Erin will be facilitating those questions. I am going to shift a little bit, Joyce, and I'm going to come to the last question, and then we're going to go to Q&A relative to, and then I'll, in the interest of time, we'll move to Q&A. We'll come back to an open question. So third space, I want to quickly, Joyce, get out of your way. A lot of people don't understand what that third space is. And Midtown, you mentioned having an equity development framework. You talked about establishing an equity development as from a policy perspective. And I also heard you say that effort was years in the making. And I'm familiar with some of the work that you have, and time, energy, and effort that has been committed to on behalf of Midtown, from your board leadership to staff and to the folks you work with in the community. So can you describe what that third space concept is within the framework of the commercial real estate development efforts in Midtown?
Sure, thanks, Chris. And wow, what a layered question. I'll try my best with the time that we have left. And so as you mentioned, third space is really this concept that you have a primary space, which is your home, maybe a second space like your workplace, and then the third space is or third place is a place where you go outside of those. So maybe it's churches, clubs, cafes, public libraries. And I think one of the first things I want to acknowledge is that, for us, we want to be very proximate to the community around this question, because that's ultimately not up for us to determine, but it's really the residents and maybe even the employees of Midtown to really understand what third spaces look like. And I also want to acknowledge that many, many historic third places continue to exist, that sometimes go under our radar. It doesn't fit necessarily into the narrative of, this commercial or corporate space along Euclid Avenue, but there are places like churches around in neighborhoods, and there were former places that used to be, places special to the community that fell, because of the redlining and disinvestment, the urban renewal and demolition, that these spaces, these magnificent spaces that once was inclusive of community members, is no longer there, and now vacant land exists. And so I think for us, we need to identify where those third spaces continue to be special for community members, to preserve those. And then also, as we think through, new development, which, we have lots of vacant land, it's really coming back to the community and not doing a one-time engagement process where we say, all right, we're going to do a meeting where we tell you what's going on and, tell me like one thing you like about the design, but it's really an ongoing conversation. And it's an ongoing relationship, because it's really about transformation and not just transaction. Like, okay, tell me this, we'll do this. But it's really an ongoing conversation with the community that we want to have. And they have ideas. They have lots of ideas about spaces that would be welcoming to them, what it would look like, what it would feel like, how they might benefit from that. And I think my last point is just that, when I first came to Midtown as an urban planner, I was like, wow, so much vacant land. And just thinking about the vacant land, my perspective began to change, because the land has been impacted historically. And so if you have histories of zoning and restrictive deeds, the land is not a blank slate. If the land has been redlined and disinvested, it's not a blank slate. If there were places that were special to the community that have been demolished, it's not a blank slate. Those places are meaningful to people. And I think we need to incorporate that into our narrative as we do redevelopment and real estate development, and that community members aren't necessarily against development. There's this narrative of residents are going to push back, but it's really how can we incorporate that into our concepts.
And Tiffany, I know that NRP has made some of those investments here in Cleveland and in Columbus. Do you want to describe a little bit about how you've engaged those communities along the lines of what Joyce was just describing?
Sure. Thanks, Chris. And Joyce couldn't have done a better job of really explaining, what the focus is when you're entering a community. It's really, creating a pathway from poverty to opportunity for folks that are in underserved communities. And, the ways in which we have done that is creating some of this workforce housing. Career Gateway is a great example of that, which is located on the south side of Columbus, where NRP partnered with Nationwide Children's Hospital, and on that site developed 58 units of affordable housing, but additionally a 3,000 square foot workforce training center, which is going to allow for job training to those that are in the neighborhood, and really creates a bridge to employment with Nationwide, which is actually the largest employer in the area. And additionally, we are underway with an additional location with Metro Health Hospital System to develop 72 units of affordable housing in Cleveland. And with that will be a 5,000 square foot opportunity center, which is really in a prime location and accessible by way of public transportation and actually walkable if you live within the community. And that specific site is going to partner with Tri-C to offer job training, but additionally will also focus on providing resources and services related to financial literacy, housing, healthcare, education, and safety. And so to Joyce's point, it really is about having some type of transformation, connecting folks in the community to the resources that they need, and for us really providing safe and affordable housing to all people regardless of income.
Sandra, I know we are at 9:25. Sandra, Tanya, did you want to add anything to that? We do have a couple of questions that I wanted to make sure we got to as well. And I'm also inviting Erin to interrupt me if she needs to. Sandra, Tanya, anything to add to the last couple
No,
of
I
points?
think Tiffany and Joyce did
Okay.
an excellent job, and we can just head on into questions since we're
Okay.
running out of time.
Right, and there was a question posed about how do developers who want to invest in red line neighborhoods. I want to encourage you to connect. You have excellent resources here, both NRP, as Tiffany described, have done projects here in Cleveland, in Columbus specifically, and probably beyond. So the contact information for Tiffany and Tanya will be available. That's one place. Within the context of community development, certainly Joyce in Midtown is another key connection there. And there was also another question about if you're an aspiring real estate developer of color and you want to get connected. Where do you start? How do you get connected? Any suggestions from the panel, and/or I'll ask Erin to perhaps respond to that as well as part of NAOP's role going forward.
Yeah, I mean, we'll definitely be sending out links for everybody to access after the panel discussion. But I did want to ask this one last question, which is a great question. Can the panelists elaborate on the hurdles that aspiring minority real estate developers and contractors face in trying to gain a foothold in the industry in Cleveland? Are there barriers here that make Cleveland a tougher place to build a pipeline of minority talent than other markets?
Yes. Panel?
It's a great question, but I know it's a thinker.
I certainly have a couple of quick thoughts. Certainly the within the work that I do and facilitate here at the Greater Cleveland Partnership, within the construction diversity and inclusion work, we lift up those opportunities. We have our financing subsidiary, Cleveland Development Advisors, is certainly actively involved in creating partnerships and welcomes conversation for minority developers who are interested in moving into that space. And there are also some some other efforts. So those are at least a couple of quick thoughts that I would have to share, and would welcome any follow-up specifically via email, and we can certainly connect you to some folks who are involved more specifically in responding to that question. It's 9:28, and Erin, I want to turn the remaining couple of minutes back over to you, and thank you panelists for a fantastic discussion. We certainly look forward to continuing to stay connected and to support each other in this really important work of connecting women and people of color into the commercial real estate sector. Erin?
Thanks, Chris. Yes, thank you all for joining us today. A recording of the panel discussion will be sent to attendees along with the links that were mentioned to make sure that you can connect to anybody that you would like. And then we are looking forward to continuing the conversation and turning obviously words into actions going forward. We hope to see you at our next event, our Charity Clays tournament on November 20th at the Hill and Dale Club. Thank you all, and look forward to chatting with you soon.